In July 1861, just 2 months after the Confederate troops began the Civil War by attacking Fort Sumter, the Union Army and the Northern press were eager for an advance on Richmond. President Abraham Lincoln ordered Brigadier General Irvin McDowell to launch an offensive that would quickly and decisively hit the enemy and open the way to Richmond, bringing the war to a swift end. McDowell's army began moving out of Washington on July 16th. Its slow movement allowed Beauregard to call on his fellow Confederate General Joseph Johnston for reinforcements. At this time, General Beauregard camped near Manassas in Virginia, along a river called Bull Run. On July 19th to 20th, significant reinforcements bolstered the Confederate lines behind Bull Run. Johnston arrived with all of his army, except for the troops of General Kirby Smith, who were still in transit. Most of the new arrivals were stationed near Blackburn's Ford, and Beauregard planned to attack north towards Centreville from there. On the morning of July 21st, McDowell sent the divisions of Hunter and Heintzelman about 12,000 men from Centreville. They marched southwest on the Warrenton Turnpike and then turned northwest towards Sadlay Springs to get around the Confederates' left. Tyler's division of about 8,000 marched directly toward the Stone Bridge and reached it around 6 a.m. 5:30 a.m. As the Federal infantry began to snake its way around the Confederate defenses along Bull Run, the lone report of a cannon was heard. Union artillerist Peter Conover Haynes ordered his 30 pounds Parrott rifle to fire on the Confederates near the Stone Bridge. The shell flew over the Confederate infantry and into the Van Pelt's house on the bluff above the creek. The battle had begun. At 9 a.m., Confederate signal officer E.P. Alexander spotted enemy movement beyond the left flank. Using signal flags, he alerted Colonel Nathan Evans at the Stone Bridge. Evans swiftly repositioned his brigade to intercept the Union attack. Around 10 a.m., the Union advance was led by Colonel Ambrose. Burnside's New England Brigade reached Matthews Hill. For nearly 2 hours, soldiers from 8 states clashed on Matthews Farm with troops from New York, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. As more Union forces joined, the Confederate line faltered, retreating south through the Stonehouse Yard and up Heri Hill. Despite the Federal victory on Matthews Hill, there was no widespread assaults, but sporadic fighting persisted across the battlefield. As Confederate troops retreated up Heri Hill, New York regiments pursued, clashing near the Stonehouse. In the skirmish, Colonel Henry Slocum of the 27th New York Infantry was wounded. Further to the east, elements of various Confederate commands, including Colonel Wade Hampton's Hampton Legion and General Thomas Jackson's Virginia Brigade, engaged General Erasmus Keyes' New Englanders around the buildings of the James Robinson Farmstead. While successful in pushing the Confederates back, Keyes called off his assault and remained in a position near the Stone Bridge for the remainder of the day. The Confederate refugees of the fighting on Matthews Hill were met by Generals Joseph Johnston and Beauregard, who immediately began the task of restoring order and creating a defensible position. Coming into position on the eastern slope of the hill were the 2,500 Virginians under General Thomas Jackson and a line of 13 artillery pieces. This new line was quickly challenged by Federal soldiers striking at their right near the Robinson Farm, and a long-range artillery bombardment that continued for over an hour. At 2:30, General Irvin McDowell directed Captains James Rikett and Charles Griffin to move their artillery from Dogan Ridge to the western slopes of Heri Hill, despite their objections and preference to stay at a safer distance. Griffin and Rickett's 11 guns advanced. As Rickett's guns moved into position on the hill, he quickly came under fire from Jackson's infantry and the massed Confederate artillery opposite him. In this early action on Heri Hill, Rickett's cannoneers also opened fire toward the Henry House, with the artillery captain noting that his men completely riddled it. Federal infantry support, comprising New Yorkers, Minnesotans, and the U.S. Marine Corps Battalion, swiftly joined the artillery on Heri Hill, engaging Jackson's brigade at close range. Simultaneously, Captain Charles Griffin repositioned 2 of his 5 artillery pieces to enfilade the Confederate line, causing confusion. Initially mistaken for allies, the unidentified troops revealed themselves as Confederates, capturing the guns. This marked a pivotal moment in the battle on Heri Hill. Following the capture of Griffin's 2 advanced guns, Jackson ordered his men to advance, admonishing his men to yell like furies. Elements of his brigade surged towards the artillery on the western slope of Heri Hill. The fighting around James Rikett's 6 cannons grew with intensity as the position changed hands 3 times. Late in the afternoon, Confederate reinforcements under Col. Jubal early extended the Confederate line and attacked the Union right flank on Chin Ridge. Jackson's forces advanced on Heri Hill, pushing back Federal infantry and capturing guns. The Union center withdrawal spread to the flanks. After some time, Col. Jeb Stuart's Virginia cavalry arrived, charging into a disarray of Union regiments, prompting their retreat. As the battle concludes, Confederate morale rises with President Jefferson Davis' arrival from Richmond. Despite the disorganized victory, the Confederates cannot pursue the fleeing Federals. Hampered by obstacles, McDowell's retreating forces, hindered by civilian spectators from Washington, eventually reached safety in D.C. Daybreak on July 22nd found the defeated Union Army back behind the bristling defenses of Washington. The defeat led to McDowell's subsequent relief of command, marking a significant moment in the early stages of the Civil War. The Union, now regrouping, would face ongoing challenges as the conflict continued.